Reach the icon.
Well, radio's always been something that interested me, I guess because I'm old enough. I remember the 60s and things like FM radio were kind of new even then. My dad was in the Air Force, and we lived in Panama, and somebody had a shortwave radio there, because I can barely remember that. And then we had some relative, and I was really young. We ended up going to Germany, and I didn't have one over there, which is kind of weird, but I was a broke teenager, so I spent all my money on trains at the time. But that's just another hobby I have. But the thing that really sparked the idea of having our own radio station was my participation in the Central American Solidarity Movement in the 1980s. And there our problem was constantly trying to get an alternative message into the establishment media. It's always very difficult. I mean, you'd do a lot of work and things would either not be covered at all or they'd be covered in a very superficial way that just tended to empower the messages of the powers that be, so to speak. So I said, well, this would be a really great idea. It would cost very little. We could apply for a station. And we found out at RFU, it takes a lot of people to do these things. So we filed the application in 2000, and unfortunately National Public Radio sort of saying, oh, well, you don't need to give those licenses out to people because it would just cause interference with real radio stations. We had this big event to put up the station, and there were like almost 200 people here, if I remember right, over the course of a long weekend, and by the end of the weekend we were on the air. One of the things that we wanted to do right from the beginning was to make it so that the station didn't really have anybody to answer to or any control over what the finances were. So the idea was we could do this pretty cheap. The main thing is we need a facility, and we've got that with the IMC. There's a little bit of money involved in paying for the overhead for the studio, like electricity and heat and stuff like that, but it's not rent per se. It's sort of like doing our part for the whole. We have to pay broadcast licensing fees, the BMI and ASCAP and CSAC, I think are the three acronyms. You got to look those up, I can't ever remember what they stand for. So that's a big chunk of money. And then there's just the basic things of staying on the air, like equipment fails sometimes. A lot of our stuff is donated, it's not professional. The parts that really need to be are good of all transmitter and some of the parts that are in the air chain going up to the transmitter. We'd really like to have a taller tower. We've kind of had an unofficial tower raising campaign underway now for, well, almost since we started, but the last couple of years anyway, because where the tower is now, it's only 65 feet high, and a lot of the buildings on campus block enough of the signal that people over, particularly get to Prospect Avenue, but even some places nearer than that, if you're behind the building, you can't get to the station. We can actually only go up 100 feet, so it's not that much taller, but we need every foot we can get. And we've got to stay downtown too, because it's 100 watts, the power of a single light bulb, effectively. What we do is we form media and provide opportunities for people in the community, particularly those who haven't had a voice in the past or had very limited opportunities, for those people to speak up and to speak their minds. And that can be regarded by people as being very threatening, because they're used to having a nice tame media that they can control. We have two sort of big categories of shows. We have live shows, which programming groups take responsibility for. Then we have what we call automation. And automation is two things. There's a few shows that we do. This is part of some specific intent to do community service. We do Spanish language programming in the afternoon. And this is something that is really needed in the community, because there's very little Spanish language programming available to folks that tend to be most folks that speak Spanish. In other words, they may often not have computers. You get a computer, you can listen to radio anywhere. But folks who, their economics and just lifestyle, if they're mobile and stuff, they can't afford to keep up with computers, and we put something on the dial for them to listen to. We do various international programming that's now available on the internet. A lot of it is shortwave, or was shortwave in the past, but A lot of shortwave is now shifting to the internet too, but it has the same problem that, you know, if you don't have a computer, you can't listen to it. So this puts it on the airwaves again. And then other than that, what we do is we broadcast local music, because that's one of the things. I mean, you can turn around the radio dial and get 3 different brands of direct, you know, stuff that's, you know, cookie cutter. You know, somebody in some distant city decided that they want their stations to listen to that. So we do things a little bit differently. We basically take local music, put it in the automation system, after checking to make sure it's legal, because it's the same rules as anything else. If you're into doing music and that's the kind of show you want to have, or you can just do a little bit of everything. I've got a friend and his colleague. They have a show. They do industrial music. It's even industrial in the sense I call it noise. What can I say? But you know, hey, nowhere else can you do it. You can do music here that maybe nobody except you is interested in doing. And that's one of the cool things, because you might find out eventually somebody else will want to do that. Or they'll think, well, if they can do that stuff, why can't I just do this other wacky idea? So in a sense, just seeing that other people in the community can do this, it's a very low bar to get into it, that it's something that doesn't take a lot of skill, and you know, you don't have to spend years learning. And in fact, what happens is you can get in and learn as you go, basically. That's another thing that we try to let people know. It persuades people that, yeah, you can do this. And that's, like I said, oftentimes the biggest hurdle is convincing people that they can do things. That's the thing. We're not one of these top-down organizations. We all try to work together and try to convince people that they can do things. That's one of the big things, because the more people that do that, the more they're empowered. And quite frankly, that's something that is really some of the most difficult things. People can read the right books, listen to the right programs, come to the right meetings, but unless they feel empowered, you don't get a lot out of that. And I've always been sort of a more pragmatic sort of person. You know, I could talk ideology all day long, but I'm more concerned about what works, what changes things when it comes to the bottom line. We've had people try to attack us over our supposed politicization of things, and it's just because it's not the message they want heard, is what it comes down to. We're always very conscientious about keeping politics off. So if somebody has a show, it's their show, that's their point of view. It's not the station's point of view, it's a standard sort of disclaimer thing. That's their point of view, and anybody else can come in here. We've had all kinds of folks, still do. I mean, we've had some libertarian student group from campus had a station on there for a while, and I probably wouldn't agree with much of anything they said, maybe a few things. We have folks that, a lot of folks from the local African American community who have various religious shows and stuff. I'm not big on religion myself, but they don't have an opportunity to do that anywhere else. So we're less about politics. I mean, some of the things, you know, they're going to irritate some people, but I'm sorry, you know, if you don't like that, free speech is more free speech. If you think that's a problem, we're not going to do what we're doing.
Yeah, I brought what they can bring.